Hi, everybody. Diana here. Welcome to So Uncommon on Sunday. I hope you've all had a great week. I bet you noticed there's a different background today. I'm normally over at my cutting table with my fabric wallpaper in the back and all of that. But today I am here at my embroidery machine. And I'm here because today we're going to talk about some embroidery stuff. And I know I told you last week, so I feel like I might have fibbed to you a teeny little bit, because last week I told you I was going to go back to my socialites blocks that I'm doing from the Fat Quarter Shop Socialite Quilt Along. But I decided, whoops, I just hit my knee. I decided that I would do this instead because I've been dying to do this little project. And I thought, well, this will give me some time to share some tips and tricks and things about editing and all with you. We're not going through the whole project. I've already got it started and I'm going to show it to you here in a sec. But I am going to show you a couple stitch outs and something that you can do to do some editing on screen. And then I'm going to talk to you about some editing software as well. And just so you know, I'll make a full disclosure right now. I am not an affiliate of, an employee of, or supported by in any way any of the companies that I mention in today's video. They are all products that I use personally, tried and true, and so I feel comfortable telling you about them. I'm not telling you to go out and get them. If you want to, that's completely up to you. These are just the things that I use, so I might as well tell you about them since I'm going to be using them, because I know you're going to ask. So that's today. So back to your week. How was your week? Did you have a good week? It was a little bit of an odd week for me. I had my first out of the house, fully vaccinated, no mask dinner event on Thursday night. I was extremely nervous. It was in a home. Dave knows the people very well. I don't know them too well. I know them much better now. We had a lovely time. My doctor's a little upset with me that I went out without a mask, even though I'm fully vaccinated, because we have quite a bit of breakthrough COVID going on right now in our area. So she's actually got me isolating for a few days just to be on the safe side. You know, in all honesty, it's out of an abundance of caution from her because they don't want to ever see me as sick as I was 2 years ago, and I don't ever want to be back there. So she's like, I don't want you jeopardizing your health that way. It's very kind of her to think of it in those terms. But so far, knock on wood, I'm fine. And we had a lovely evening. It was really interesting to be out among the 3D people for an evening. But it was a lovely evening. But when we got home that evening, because I had had a light dinner, I have some food restrictions, and I don't ever expect my hosts to accommodate me. So I always offer to bring something, and I did. And so I stayed with the foods that I could eat, and I ate salad that I brought. And but when I got home that evening, I was still a little bit hungry, just a tiny bit. And I thought, I just want something little, but I want it to be a little protein in there kind of thing, because I could tell my body that's what I wanted. So a few days earlier, I had made some homemade biscuits. I know, where's the health in those, Diana? Absolutely none. But I had some homemade biscuits, and I thought, you know what, if I take a biscuit and I throw it on a little plate in the microwave for like 10, 12 seconds to get the chill off, and then put some peanut butter on there, that's the healthier part, right? And let it get a little melty. That'll be a nice snack. It's not too big, it's not too heavy, and it should feed that craving that I seem to be having. So I put my biscuit on my plate, popped it in the microwave, set my timer, hit go, and poof, boom, everything in the microwave went dark. Nothing. Opened the door, closed the door, replugged it, nothing. That microwave wasn't coming back on to save itself. So I ended up with a cold biscuit and peanut butter, which still did the trick. But the microwave had died, or so I thought. Didn't do anything to it on Friday because it was a dead microwave. We were going to go this weekend and buy a new microwave because I actually use the microwave to cook in a lot of the times. I don't just reheat in it. I actually do some cooking in it. Back when we got our very first microwave, back like in 1984, maybe, Dave and I got our first microwave, and it came with this cookbook on how to use it and how to actually cook in it. And because we were in a small apartment, we had an oven, but it was a small oven. And so I thought, you know what, I'll learn to cook in it. And I did. And so I've used it for years to cook in. So I was kind of like a little going, oh, rats, we got to go buy a microwave, right? So we were going to do that this weekend. But yesterday, Saturday, after Dave and I had breakfast together, I went to start doing some cleaning up in the kitchen and all. And the microwave and the coffee station is all in the same area. And as always, I have my coffee with me today. And Starbucks, a Starbucks from home though. And so I started doing some cleaning up, and I just moved the microwave. Like literally I went, and it popped on. And I'm just like, oh, well, isn't that interesting? I opened the door, it stayed on. And I thought, what's going on here? So Dave said, put some water in a cup and put it in and try to see if it will heat. So I put about this much water in a plastic cup or a microwavable cup, threw it in there, put it on 10 seconds, took it out, stuck my finger in there. Ouch, hot. It had heated it up. Well, isn't that interesting? And the second I closed the door, poof, it went back off again. And I'm like, oh no, I thought it was fixed. And so I went to move it again. Boop, it turned back on. And ever since then, it's been back on. So I told Dave, I'm like, let's watch it. Let's be careful when we open and move it. Apparently it's got something with being moved right now, and see how long we can drag it out before we have to buy a new microwave. So for now, the microwave is working. So keeping our fingers crossed. But yeah, Thursday night, we had a really lovely time. Dave has some colleagues here from Germany and Switzerland, I believe. And so we were invited to a dinner that was being given in their honor. And there was only 6 adults and 2 teenagers. So, and everybody except one of the teenagers, because she's a young teenager, had been vaccinated. So I feel like we were fine. They say we're fine to do that now. So, but my doctor was a little concerned for me. I'm glad she is, you know, I'm glad I have a doctor who is actually concerned about her patients, right? That's a good thing. So that was my week. I ran 28 miles this week. So I was pretty chuffed about that because my previous record was 25. So it was not a bad week. And I got something in the mail, and that kind of goes along with today because it's thread. It's embroidery thread. This is a quartet of variegated. Do you ever use variegated thread in your machine embroidery? I love it. I love it for quilting. I love it for decorative stitching. I mean, the only thing I don't do is just general tack down of things with it. But I love it. I have a ton of it over here. I have a ton of it in boxes. I just have it everywhere. I really love it. But I didn't have these. And this is by the Dime Company, Designs and Machine Embroidery. Eileen Roach, you may know her. This is her exquisite line of thread. Eileen's company also does the King Star Metallic. Before I tell you about this, let me tell you about this metallic thread. There's lots of colors. This is the silver. Oh my good golly. This is the best metallic thread. I have like 3 or 4 other brands of metallic thread, and I never use them anymore because there is nothing like this. Now, from what the company has said, this thread is the same thread that they use to make all the beautiful embroidered Japanese kimonos. And so you don't have to change your needle. You can use whatever needle you got in there. You don't have to change your speed, and it doesn't break. I thought, okay, it's metallic thread. It's going to break, right? It doesn't break. I mean, I think in all the time I've used it now, it may have broken once. And the reason it broke was because I had misthreaded my machine. So it wasn't the threads problem. So they are the folks that bring us the King Star Metallic. I'll just show you some of their colors too. Beautiful green. That's your Christmassy green. Look at that purple. Isn't that great? That's really great for flowers. It's also great if you like to add a touch of purple to your Halloween stuff. My favorite is this aqua teal color, because you guys know aqua teal is my favorite color, right? That and red. And then there is a gold. I've got a gold down here too. I've got over in one of my other boxes, I have a rust, and they have all kinds of green. I have like a royal blue color. I think they have some beautiful colors in that King Star. But anyway, this medley, it's called Medley of Variegated Poly, because it's 100% polyester. So this colorway up here is called Sunset. Isn't that pretty? Look at all those oranges and reds and yellows. It says, so let's just open it up. Why don't we? We'll get to today's stuff, but let's have a little fun and open something up. So what I love about these medleys, because this is the way any of her quartets come, is they have this piece of hardboard with this sticker on them, and it gives you the number, the name, and a preview of what each thread is. And I keep these so that when I have to go to reorder, I'm not looking for that little bitty number on top there that might get broken when you poke through the center. So I keep those for that. I love it. So, oh gosh, there's kind of an inner packaging too. Hang on. See if we can get, oh, it's just tape, it looks like. A lot of tape. So I will tell you why I got it. Oh, that's all right. Now I got sticky all over everything. Gosh. I use that sticky piece to pull some threads off my shirt. Okay, so this is Sunset. Isn't that pretty? Oh, love it. Here, just give me a second. I'm going to turn off that little light for a moment because it's getting a lot of glare. So Sunset. And then this one is called Forest. Look at all those pretty greens in there. Ooh, gorgeous. I can't wait to see that one stitched out. And then there is this one, and it's called Pastel. I know you're having a really, yeah, there you go. You can kind of see that is not white. There are colors in there. But I'll tell you, they are so, I'm going to put on my magnifier so I can see it close up. Those colors are so soft and pastel, like a really super light lime green, really light bluish color. When I saw this on the screen, I thought it was a whole bunch of different creams together. There, you can see a little better that way. That's why I ordered the quartet. But I'm not disappointed that it has those colors in it, because I'm going to tell you why in a minute. And then this last one is called Desert Canyon. Really light, very neutral shades. But these two are what actually caught my eye. I have some other ones that are similar to this, not exactly, and I love these and I will use these. But these two caught my eye, and I'll tell you why. I do a lot of quilting on my embroidery machine nowadays, and I love to quilt with neutral threads that sink into the fabric and don't overtake the piecing. These two are going to do that for me. I think these are going to end up being two of my favorite machine embroidery quilting threads. So that's why I got that. So that came this week, and I'm very happy about that. And I have a little drawer down here that goes in, and this drawer is now full too. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, well, here. Let me bring in the camera. and flip it over. I'm doing a different setup since I'm over here today. I have 6 buckets full of threads, just full of them. And I have 5 cases like that and 2 cases like that. I've just got thread everywhere, but I love it. It's like having the big, huge, extra large box. Whoops, that wasn't supposed to happen. The extra large box of crayons. And so, you know, I just say, bring them on. Exquisite also makes a really nice matte thread. You know, if you don't want shine on your pieces, it's hard to find a polyester matte thread. That one is great. Love it. And it comes in several colors too. So that came in the mail today. That was exciting, or this week. That was exciting. So let's get on to what I want to really talk to you about today. Coffee break. Oh, so good. And I want to talk about editing a little bit on our machine embroidery. All of our machines can do a little bit of editing, which is great. Now, like the bigger machines, the Solara, the Luminaire, they can do a lot more editing. But on the average machine, you can increase and decrease your size a little bit. And the only reason you can only do it a little bit is because on the machine, those stitches are stretched or shrunk. They're not recalculated. So really, when you edit, you want your stitches recalculated so that everything stays in the right density, the density that it was to start with. And it keeps your pattern nice. Sometimes if you overstretch or shrink too much, you get weirdness going on. We don't like weirdness in our stitching, do we? And you can add things in, take things out of your pattern sometimes. You can do some lettering on your machine, directly on your machine. So I'm going to show you what I call my cheater way of changing up a pattern a little bit later. But what I really wanted to talk to you about is editing software. Now, I use a couple of brands. I use the Dime by Machine Embroidery, Eileen Murchis. I use her software, and I use the software by Embrilliance. We are not today going to talk about digitizing. Digitizing is when you take a piece of artwork or no artwork at all, and you, with points, you make your piece, you add in your stitches, you pick your colors, everything from scratch. That's not what we're talking about today. That's like that's the next level above just general editing. And most of us, to be honest, only want to edit pre-existing patterns that we purchase, files, right? And they allow us to do that. Now, I'll say something about digitizing here real quick. If you, because a lot of us do this, we'll find a drawing, like an outline, and we'll use that as a base to make our digitized pieces with. Please make sure when you do that, that you have the proper license to do it. If you're going to use that as a file that you're going to use in a class that you teach, or you're going to sell it online, or anything like that, make sure you have a proper license to do so. The licenses aren't expensive. You can read, sometimes they're built into the purchase of the clip art. Just make sure that you have the ability to do that if that's your intent, so that you don't bring trouble to your door, right? Because we don't want trouble. No. We got trouble, my friends, right here in River City. We don't want no trouble. That's a line from Music Man. Dave and I are currently working on Music Man. And I love that song. Music Man is one of my favorite all-time musicals. So this one is really fun. Anyway, so that's just my disclaimer on if you're digitizing. And if you are digitizing, you probably know that. And if you're digitizing just for your own use, there's usually no problems. But if you're going to sell or teach it and give it away and stuff, you need to make sure you have that covered. But what we're talking about today is editing. Dime does something really kind of spectacular, in my opinion. They have an editing software called the Tool Shed. I like that name. I'm kind of a gadgety tool girl, so I love that name, Tool Shed. And it's a free download. I'm putting that information in the description below. And the nice thing about it is if you purchase ever any of their other software products, they all run within the Tool Shed. So you have a tool shed, it's got all your software in it. I think it's kind of a unique and brilliant little idea they did there. So, bravo. And so that is one of the editing softwares I will show you today a little bit. And then the other series of softwares that I use come from the Embrilliance company. Essentials, Enthusiast, Stitch Artist, Alpha Tricks, I think is one of them. So they have their whole lineup, right? And they all work within the same platform too. It just doesn't have the cute name of the Tool Shed. And the Tool Shed is a free editing program. I'll put the Embrilliance link below too, if you want to go and check out their page and their products. And I know there are lots of other editing programs out there. You may have bought or gotten one for free when you bought your Brother or your Baby Lock or your Bernina or your Janome or your Pfaff or whatever brand machine you have at a certain level of size. I know a lot of times the companies will give embroidery software away. Even my very first little Singer embroidery machine that actually took a 6x10 hoop, which was the biggest hoop at that time, even Singer gave me with that machine free editing software. So you may have editing software already. So play with it. Have fun with it. You're not going to, I think it's Eileen Roach says, you're not going to break your software. So don't worry about it. If you have to close it out and restart it, do it. You know, I've done some things before years ago in softwares where I've had to take it all off my machine and put it back on my machine, but it's not broken. It just, you know, and learn. It's a great way to learn. Just get in there and start pressing buttons. Figure out what things do. Usually if you hover over something, it's going to kind of tell you what it's for. So the project I've been working on is called the She Shed. Isn't that a cute name? I love it. The She Shed. And let's see, this is not the base one. Hang on. I want to bring up the base product, the base file for you to see. Right. So here, it doesn't say Heartfelt Creative. That's something I added, obviously, right? But we'll talk about that in a little while too. The rest of it, though, is the base tool shed. You get the shed, and you get the mannequin, the desk, the rug, the sewing machine, and it also has a cat in it that I have already taken out of mine because I don't know if you noticed on the other one I showed you, there's a different pet in there. But they do have a cat in this one as well. So if you have a cat or you like cats, you have a little pet in there as well. And so this is what I've been working on. And we'll go back over to mine. So what I did in this one is I edited a lot. Now I added in Heartfelt Creative. I'm actually going to show you something different with that later over at the actual machine. That's the cheater piece I'm going to show you. But I added in the other pieces in Embrilliance. So I'm going to bring that up to show you. let's see here. There we go. So I did the major editing in my Embrilliance software for this. But what I did and what you can do is you can bring in other little stitch outs to make this all your own. So I had some embroidery files already that I'd purchased. So I had this lovely little cup here. You know, I always have my coffee cup, right? So I made it, I saw this one and thought, perfect, that'll be perfect in my shed. I changed the colors of my rug to make this more that aqua color that I love, in the background a little more orangey green. And then what I did over here, if you noticed on the original, let's see, I'll just switch it again to show you that, but over here on the original one, there we go. The mannequin here is a stitch out. It's a fill stitch, but I wanted to change it to an applique, and that's what I did. I changed it to an applique. So this is now an applique, and I'm going to show it to you on my piece because that part is done. It turned out beautifully, and I did that in my editing software. I had a little puppy instead of a kitty. This little guy is Vernon, after a Basset of mine and Dave's. And he looks just like our little Vernie, same colors. He's just precious. So I put him in there. I was able, but if you notice, Vernon is sitting kind of on top of this part. So in my editing software, I was able to get rid of the hidden stitches, or the stitches that were, let's see. I don't know how much I can do on here. Whoops. Anyway, if you move Vernon over, you'll see that the stitches for that leg aren't there. So stitches aren't stacked on one another. So I did that. I added in the name. And you all know that I love doing the Scandinavian applique that we've been doing over in my applique group, Collage Forms. So that was reminiscent. So I did that. And because of Heartfelt Creative, I had to add hearts in here somewhere, right? Well, here in our part of Illinois, and I know in other states too, Kansas and Iowa and in other states, there are things called barn quilts. You'll go along the countryside and you'll see a barn, and there's this big old quilt block been painted on the barn. They're gorgeous, and they make really fun like Sunday afternoon rides, because around here there's 3 different trails actually that you can take, and they each take a couple of hours to drive them and see all the quilts. And so I found this heart, and it kind of reminded me that would kind of be what I would do as my barn quilt if I were going to do one, because it's kind of an appliqued heart. So I put it on the door here, and then I copied and pasted and brought the second one over to this door. So I have them matching on both sides. I didn't change the color of the desk in the software, but you'll see on the piece that I stitched out, I changed my desk and I used kind of a deeper gray, because my desk is actually, my sewing table is gray. So I used that color. And I'll show you what I did with the sewing machine as well. So how these particular stitch outs that I had are minis. So if you, I'm going to put the link to the place where I found these. And if you type in the description bar, mini or mini designs, if they have them in that company, they'll come up. And they work perfect for stitching out on these pieces that are smaller, that are going to be mug rugs or something like that. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the thread I used for them. Dime, Designs and Machine Embroidery, have a line of thread called Fine Line. It's a 60 weight. Let me come back to my main screen here. It's a 60 weight thread, and it comes in a packet, and I think there's 12 or 15 colors. I'm praying every night that they will come up with a whole range of colors, like this aqua color and peaches and pinks and all of that. And I'll tell you why. When they talk about this thread, this 60 weight thread, they talk about it specifically to be used for microfonts and lettering. And since I started using it for especially my microfonts, my whole embroidery of letters has changed and been better. I used to have a real problem with my machine stitching out microfonts without getting bird's nests and stuff because the stitches were so small. But with a 60 weight thread and a 60 or even a 90 weight bobbin thread, my lettering now comes out beautifully. So I highly recommend. You might be able to find other 60 weight threads out there. I found out about them through, you could use this as a 60 weight bobbin thread if you wanted to. And sometimes I do. If I want a matching bobbin, I'll use this in my bobbin weight instead of my 40 weight thread. So I use this also for my mini stitch outs. Now I'm going to show you my actual piece. So you can see I'm well into my piece. And so I have made this piece completely and utterly my own. I made my own back wall. You'll recognize that fabric. It's the same fabric that I have wallpapered on my wall over at the cutting table where I normally film from. So that's back there. I made the mannequin into an applique, and through the editing software, I was able to reset my satin stitch to be a shorter satin stitch. So instead of, see, do I have a wider satin on here? You can see it here on the door. That's a wider satin stitch. I didn't want that wide of a stitch on here. It would have taken up too much of this fabric in the applique. So I set it down. This is a 2.0. And it turned out beautifully. I couldn't be more happy. The stand is just a stitch out. And see here, you can see where that leg is there's no leg there. That's where Vernon will sit when I get to stitch him out. That's what I meant by I took away the hidden stitches in the Embrilliance software. And as you can tell, what I did with my machine is I made it white, because I have Baby Lock and Brother and all their machines are white. So I made it white, and they have kind of a gold or, yeah, I'll just call it gold, kind of a gold color for their highlights. Brother is blue, but the Baby Locks are gold. And so I used King Star Gold metallic thread right in there to do the highlights on my machine. So it looks more like my machine. This is going to be my shed. So that's what I did. And I've done one of the hearts, and I chose my own colors. I didn't go by the colors on the file. And I'll show you the leaves. This is done in a variegated thread, but I'm going to show you that because we're going to actually stitch that out here in a minute, the second one, when we get over to the machine. But the other thing I wanted to tell you about is, so those 60 weight threads, wherever possible, I've been using those in those smaller designs, in those mini designs, and they work beautifully. So I guess my tip to you on this one is, if you're going to do mini designs like on mug rugs and stuff, try a 60 weight polyester thread. Whether it's fine line or not, doesn't matter. Any brand of 60 weight thread, you know, give it a try. I happen to like this thread and know this thread, but there might be others out there that I don't know about. But here's the other thing that I did differently. This week's Good Gadgets episode is also being posted today. Normally, I don't post Good Gadgets on Sunday because I like to give you a little something in the week. But it goes so well with today's Sewing Common that I've gone ahead and filmed it and it's being posted as well, because it's about fabric stabilization when you applique, whether you applique by hand, by sewing machine, or embroidery machine. So normally when I stabilize my fabric, so your stabilizer stabilizes your stitches, but you need to stabilize your fabric too. And I will tell you, and it's the honest truth, the more you stabilize, you can't over stabilize. The more you stabilize, the less trouble you will have, the less puckers you'll have. I have not, in the way I've stabilized this, I have not had one pucker. I've used a heavyweight cutaway stabilizer. I happen to use the one by Bell. It's the heavyweight cutaway. I use that. The instructions for this piece called for a piece of batting. Well, instead of batting, I used fusible fleece, and I fused it right to my batting, or to my stabilizer. And so it wasn't going to move around. It wasn't going to stretch. It was as stable as I could make it. And then normally for my fabric pieces, when I applique, I will use, and I've told you this often, like in workshops and stuff, and in other videos, that SF 101 by Pellon is a great woven fusible interfacing. Bell has one called fusible backing. Both beautiful products. I use them all the time. But a few weeks ago, I took an event from Janome, and the educator, the Janome educator, recommended that we try using, I've had this product for a long time because I use it for other things, but he suggested that we try Material Magic to stabilize our fabrics. I'm going to talk all about this product in Good Gadgets. I'm also going to talk to you about other ways to stabilize your fabric. So I'm not going to go into a lot of details here, but he said, try this. And so I did. And I'm going to, this is a piece that was cut away from my background. Can you hear that sound? Your fabric, when it's not stabilized, doesn't sound like this. Do you see this? I mean, it's moving, but it's not all. So when I go to move it, it has stability to it. It has form to it now. With Material Magic, you can spray it in a way, according to the instructions, where you get this like paper, like it's rigid. That was too much for what I'm doing. But I did use it, and I'm going to show you that in the Good Gadgets video, how I used it. But it worked perfectly. It was an experiment I used this time, and it worked perfectly. I loved it. I want to show you something though. There's one part that I could have gone back and used a fusible backing or an SF 101. That's this fabric here. It goes, it's the back, what the pattern called the back wall fabric. This fabric is a little bit thinner and you could see through it. Because this was laying down right on top of the stabilizer, I just left it be. I used the Material Magic on it and left it be. But if I were going to put this over, like this fabric especially, and it was going to pop through and be seen, then I would have taken that piece of fabric back over and put a piece of SF 101 or fusible backing on it to make that thicker. But what I've liked about this Material Magic, using it this way, is it hasn't added additional bulk, but it really has stabilized my pieces. I don't have a single pucker in this piece. If I had not stabilized my fabrics anywhere, the heart, around here, the cup, the machine, the rug, anywhere in here where there's some heavy stitching, could have easily had puckering. And I know that that is one of the things that drives us all crazy, is when we get pieces that pucker and we're like, how do we stop it? And one of the ways is to add a fusible backing to it. But this Material Magic worked great. It was a complete experiment, and I was very, very happy with the outcome. So in the Good Gadgets video, I'm going to show you what you do with this product according to the manufacturer's instructions, and talk a little bit more about using it for different forms of applique and other appliques. So this week is applique stabilization in Good Gadgets. So you'll want to catch that video too. So let's stitch out my second heart. And I also want to show you something on the machine. So I guess what I can say is get yourself, if you don't have it already, get yourself some editing software. Load your piece. It's not difficult. And if you don't know how to use your editing software, I'm not going to show you all the, let's go back here for a second. I'm not going to show you all these buttons, how they work, because this is the software that I use. You may have another software and it could be completely different. I know the buttons on this software are different than the buttons on the Dime software that I use. So it doesn't do you any good or me any good to go over all of that with you. But in your embroidery software that you have, you either got it with your machine or you're going to go and get it, play with it. Click on buttons, see what they do. If you hover over them, see if I hover over that, it tells me preferences, and it will bring up, if I click it, it'll bring up like, how do I choose my hoop, and how do I check for updates, and how do I go into ghost mode, and what is that, and how do I do jump stitches, all that kind of stuff. So play with it and figure it out. This is my go back a step button. Erase what I just did. Let's go back. I did something that wasn't good. I want to go back. You know, so that kind of thing. Software isn't difficult in any way, shape, or form. And if you want to learn about your software, I'm going to recommend you come to YouTube, you type in the company or the name of the software, and I will bet you will find videos to help you out. Or on the company's website, most likely they will have videos to help you out. And it will really take your embroidery from the baseline of whatever the project is. And projects are put together to be beautiful. They don't have to be changed in any way. But if you want to personalize it or add a little extra something to it, do a little something, take something away, maybe change colors, maybe, your software is where it's at. And it will add just that extra little something to your embroidery journey. And I think you're going to love it. So give your softwares a try. So I'm going to bring the camera in here. It's on a swing arm because I'm in a completely different setup over here in the embroidery area. So let me flip my camera over. There we go. So I've turned off my machine light so that you can see a little better, because you get really some glare in here from the light, and there's no, if I turn my light on, whoosh, it's like a big ball of light. So you can kind of see this. It's actually going to stitch out down here, but it'll bring this up here in a moment. So let's look at the screen for a moment on my machine. So this is showing me my full design. And you can see right there, it says, I mean, I know it's hard, you can't read it, but it says Heartfelt Creative, because that's what I put in my stitch out. But let's look back over here at my piece. Those words should be right up here in this roof line. But what I did is when I cut this out, do you remember this piece I showed you? I cut between them out. I could have left it because it was supposed to look like wood, but I cut them out because our little shed in the back garden actually has some little sun windows like that on it. And I thought that would be cute to kind of mimic that on my own shed. So I cut those out and let the sky fabric pop through. All of these fabrics on here are different Kimberbell fabrics that I had, except for the sky blue one. It is a Moda Grunge fabric. And you know how the Moda Grunge has the different variegated colors in it? It worked out perfect for the sky. Really pleased with that. My little mug here, I did in purple and gold instead of the green that it shows on the screen, because the University of Washington is in my school and their colors are purple and gold. So that's what I did there. And, but what I want to show you, so right here should be the heartfelt creative, right? Let's go back over to here. Okay. Let's see, can I bring it in a little bit better? I think that's as good as we're going to get. I love how this part shows up on my screen, on my video screen, as red, when that is as orange as the day is long. It's like a gold orange even. That's funny how it changes those colors through the camera. So my words are right here, but I've made those little window pieces right there. So I don't want to put the words over it now. So what I want to do is maybe put the words in this area, but then it would be over my Norwegian piece. Well, I've decided not to stitch my Norwegian piece there, or my Scandinavian piece there now. Okay. So, well, it's already on here, Diana. What are you going to do? So this is I call this my cheater piece. So down here on my thing, there's a return button, and it takes me back one page. And on this page, there's a delete and an add button. Now I could go through and find those two pieces and delete them out from my machine, but that's more trouble than I want to take to do it. This is the down and dirty, quick, let's get it done type of editing that I do on my machine. You might as well know all my quirks, right? So I hit the add button and I come back over to my embroidery, my USB, which is right here on my pigtail. And I talk about pigtails in a previous Good Gadgets video, so you can check that out. So I come over here to my USB, and well, now that was interesting. How weird is that? It's bringing me right back to this. It's not add. There we go. Okay, here we go. So right here are all my files that I have on my USB. Right there is my words, Heartfelt Creative. So I'm going to touch that. And look, there it is. It's right in my design now, except it's going this way, and that's not where I want it, right? So I click on my set button. And on here, there is a button that says rotate. And I want to rotate this 90 degrees. So I just hit the 90-degree button. Oh, presto changeo, there it is. So now it's going in the right direction, but it's still not where I want it. So because my screen is a touch screen, I could use my arrows and bring it up that way, or I can just move it up. And I'm going to kind of get it right in there. Yep, that's where I want it. Hit close, hit, I shouldn't say hit, I should say click or choose embroidery. And now I'm back. And so now you can see, well, gosh, there's this and there's this. Holy smokes, Diana, what's going to happen? Well, if we go down here to our plus minus button, this is the area that lets us move back and forth by 1 stitch, 10 stitch, 100 stitch, or 500 stitch. Your machine probably has something similar to this on it. If it's a brother or a baby lock, it has this exact thing. I know that Bernina's go back and forth. I'm sure Janome and Pfaff and all the rest, Husqvarna Viking do as well. So you'll have to find that on your machine. But it also has these two little thread spools, a minus and a plus. That lets you go forward or backwards a whole step in your file. So I'm going to, because I know that I was at step 42, which was to do this other heart, I'm going to start going backwards. But look what happened. When I went back one, pop right there. That's where I put in my heartfelt creative. So when I'm done with everything else, it's going to then allow me to stitch heartfelt creative in that new space. But what if I had gone forward? So if I go forward, it's just taking me through all of my pieces. And there's the table. There, we're coming up to it. Oops, go back one. Boom. There is heartfelt creative. Gosh, I know you guys can't see it in this little side screen here. I know you can't because it's too bright, but it says heartfelt creative there. So it's ready on step 28 to stitch that out right there. So when I get to step 28, so I'm in my mode, I'm sewing along. I get to step 28 and go, oh, I don't want that there. I don't want to do that step. I just come down to my plus minus and I skip forward a step till it takes me, and then it started my applique process. And then when I get to this Scandinavian design, I will just skip those steps. I'll just come in here and skip those steps and take me to the next step that I want to do. That's all you have to do. And that's a really quick and easy way to edit on your machine. I do it all the time, to be honest. I'll put in like a base mug rug form, and I know I just want to add something on top. I want to do it differently. Instead of taking it into my, since I'm not increasing or decreasing size or anything like that, I just go in, I add it, I put it where I want, I skip all the other steps and go, especially if I'm in a hurry. Now, if I'm taking the time and all of that, I will put it into the editing software because that is probably the best way to do it. But this is a quick and easy way, the down and dirty way to do your editing. So I know that I was at step 42. Okay. Oops. Step 42. I'm going to close. Now I'm ready to go, and it's going to start me over here on my heart. And so I have my machine set at a medium speed, like 650. I don't usually go above 650. My machine can go a whole lot faster, can go to like 1060, 1080, something like that. I don't ever use that fast speed. If you know me, you know I don't use the fastest speed on my sewing machine either. I get too out of control on those fast speeds. So I use a 650. I use my lowest speed on this one, the 350, an awful lot. I just find, especially when I'm doing applique and all, it's just really helpful. When I'm doing lettering, I always go down to that lowest speed. My machine does better. You'll know how your machine works as far as which speeds it works best at. So I'm set up here with my white thread because it's going to do the white outline of my heart here. So I'm using a 7511 embroidery needle, which is an anti-glue needle. Someone told me the other day they don't like anti-glue needles because the coating rubs off and gets into your, I think I've never had that happen in a million years. I maybe older anti-glue needles from years back did that, but I use anti-glue needles all the time. I absolutely love them. In fact, if I can get a needle in anti-glue versus regular, I always get anti-glue now. It's just my preference. Okay, so we're ready to go. We're going to put our foot back down, and it's going to start stitching. I'm also using Isacord thread, 40 weight Isacord. It is a trilobial polyester. It is probably my go-to thread. I have tons of them. There's lots of really good ones out there. Hemingworth, Exquisite from Dime is good. Floriani is beautiful. If you want a nice liquidy, satiny look to something, Floriani, in my opinion, is the way to go. Just a second. Okay, it is stitching. I thought maybe it wasn't stitching for a moment, but it is. Wait a minute. Yeah, it's stitching. I'm going to stop this stitch out for a second. This looks. No, I guess that's right. It just looked different than my other side had looked for some reason. But it's stitching out. And so, sorry, that's kind of in the way there. Let's bring this in a little bit better. There. I'm going to bring up my light just a little bit because you really can't see without it on. 2 is a little bit much. We'll give you a little bit of light there. Okay. So there's lots of threads. There's lots of different ones. But can I say that you really get what you pay for in threads? There is a brand that I used to buy when I first started embroidering, and I'm not going to tell you what the brand is because there's no sense in it. But what I found with my higher end machines is it doesn't work well with them. It's not the highest of quality, and it's not the highest expense either. And so you kind of get what you pay for in that way. But most of the time, Isacord is my go-to on my thread. But like I said, also on these smaller pieces, I am using a lot of this 60 weight. 60 weight. So that's just stitching along. So I have my heart to do, I have Vernon to do, and then the sign piece to do. And what I'm going to be doing with this, I'm going to flip the camera back over now. So what I'm doing with this, the other thing I did in the software was I increased my size. Let's bring this back up and show you again. So this was originally, I think it originally fit in a 7x12 hoop. I enlarged the whole thing to be in my 8x12 hoop. I normally use Dime's Snap Hoop Monsters pretty much exclusively, especially for all the quilting that I do on my machine. I will only use a snap hoop. But I don't have an 8x12. It's the one I don't have. I've got all my others. I've got 4x4 and a 5x7, a 6x10, a 7x12, and an 8x8. But I don't have an 8x12 yet. It's the last one I need to get for this machine. Okay. My little heart's done. And then I can change my thread and keep going on my heart. And what I'm going to do when all of this is done is I'm going to turn it into a wall hanging. But what I did here was I went in and I popped up an 8x12 hoop in my embroidery software. And then this is not, oddly enough, it's not in my hoop at the moment because I was messing around with it a while ago. But I made an 8x12 hoop and I enlarged this. So this is now 5,400 stitches. That's a lot of stitches in here. And that's another reason you want to stabilize really well is when you are using a lot of stitches. You really want things stabilized. And so I created the whole thing larger. I enlarged it, and then I brought in all of my little extra pieces, the hearts and the mug and little Vernon. I brought him in, all of those in after I had enlarged, so then I could scale those if I needed to, according to the size the piece was going to be in the end. So let's take this out and I'll show you. So it just stitched out the heart, and I'll finish that, and then I'll do a little Vernon here, and I'll do the sign there. And then I will add a backing and all to this. And this is going to hang over on the big wall where I normally film in the end. So you'll get to see it. And I'll post a picture of it and all too. But there's a little bit more to go, and you don't want to sit and watch it stitch out the whole time probably. But I will put the information about Embrilliance and Dime here below. I will also put the information for where I got the mini stitch outs for you. But I hope you've enjoyed this week's Sew in Common. I love embroidery, and I think that if you have never tried it, and your machine has a module that came with it and a little 4x4 hoop, give it a try. You can do a lot with a 4x4 hoop. I know a lot of people say, oh, all you can do are little stitch outs on pockets and stuff like that. That's not true. I've done workshops where I've taught quilted pieces all in a 4x4 hoop. In fact, a lot of people that take my workshops have only 4x4 hoops. But if your machine will take like a 5x7 hoop, that's really a good standard size. If it has bigger ones, try using them. Typically, my biggest hoops are done mostly for my quilting, but I needed this big hoop for this size, for this little wall hanging that I want to do today. So if your machine has those size hoops, play around with them. Play around with editing stuff in your software. The other thing about editing software, I was telling you that on your machine, when you increase and decrease, it stretches and shrinks your stitches. In your editing software, it will actually recalculate all of the stitches so that it is, the density is correct, the layout is correct, all of that. All right, folks, I hope you enjoyed this episode of Sew in Common. Have a great rest of your Sunday. Catch Good Gadgets, because I'm going to talk about fabric stabilization in much more detail. Material Magic, SF101, Kimberbell, fusible backing, things like that, when to use them, how to use them, all of that. So have a great rest of your Sunday, everybody. Bye for now. Go sew life beautiful.